tennis is supposed to be a sport of meaning. You know, wars fought over, those 2 weeks of slams, rivalries that boil over in the biggest arenas in the world. But right now, professional tennis feels like a never-ending sprint, a marathon that lasts all year. Players are expected to chase ranking points, bounce from city to city every week. Fans are drowning in events and most don't even care about them. And the system's forcing players into it. A lot of the time, they don't even have a choice. It's becoming a major structural problem. And today we're going to break down why tennis has so many tournaments, how it wrecks the tour, and what needs to change. But before we get into it, you might as well hit that subscribe button, like the video, and look out for more Hot Take Tennis content moving forward. Alright, let's get into it. Now, as most of you are probably aware, professional tennis runs almost year-round. On the ATP side, the official 2025 tour calendar included 60 tournaments across dozens of countries from January until late November. And in 2026, the ATP announced a similar scale, 59 main tour events, plus team competitions and finals. That's a lot of weeks. There's no real off-season, just the time between one tournament ending and the next one starting. It's not like the NFL where players get months off, and it's not like the NBA where players can strategically rest without huge penalties and rely on their teammates. Tennis forces you to keep going. And yes, this is partly why top players openly criticize the schedule. For example, Iga Swiatek called the calendar too intense, admitting she feels forced into playing 20-plus tournaments a year just to protect her ranking. Aryna Sabalenka described the season as insane and has said she intentionally skips events to avoid burnout even though it hurts her ranking under the current rules. And Alex de Minaur said non-stop tournaments are not normal and called for a shorter season to protect careers. Now, in tennis, your ranking isn't based on best this year. It's based on a 52-week rolling system. So every point you earned last year drops off exactly 52 weeks later. If you don't defend it, you lose it, which means players aren't just competing with the guy across the net, they're literally competing with their past results. Fall off your game, skip a week, and you could fall down the rankings. So what does the system practically force players into? Well, mandatory events, ranking penalties for skipping certain tournaments, and year-round competition just to hold position. As Francisco Gaudenzi, the ATP chairman at the time, has said repeatedly, the current structure tries to balance freedom with pressure, but the end result is more events counting toward rankings than most players want. And until 2026, ATP players had 19 tournaments that count toward rankings, a huge chunk of the year. That's now being reduced to 18 next season, a start but still massive. And on the WTA side, players are also expected to play numerous mandatory events that heavily influence their ranking. This system doesn't encourage strategic rest, it punishes rest. And obviously not all tennis tournaments are equal. Slams are worth 2,000 ranking points, Masters 1,000, in the name 1,000, ATP 500, also in the name 500, and ATP 250 events, again, in the name. And for 250s, there's about 30 of them per year, which means more than half of all ATP events are 250s. And those events produce champions, sure, but their importance in the story of a season pales in comparison to slams and masters. You could win a 250, get 250 points, but go out first round of a slam and lose points. That imbalance makes fans wonder, did that match even matter? And this is exactly what former pro Tim Henman called too much irrelevant tennis, while ATP officials defended the busy calendar. And unlike soccer's leagues or the NBA's regular season, where the season build-up matters, most tennis events lack narrative. They don't really create anticipation. They just exist. When you make players play so often, fatigue follows. Between the long calendar and a scoring system that punishes skipping events, burnout is now as significant a risk as physical injuries are. And again, several players have actively spoken about this, and we've covered this in previous videos, so you might as well take a look at those. And it's not just the players that suffer, but the fans suffer too. We see complaints when top players skip tournaments, but they also complain when matches are meaningless. And that contradiction comes straight from the calendar problem. Too many events, no build-up. Not enough meaningful weeks, so fans don't care. Everything feels like just another tournament. When there's a slam on, obviously we get more of the casual fans. But when there's a Memphis 250 and a Singapore 500, not so much. It dilutes the entire sports narrative. Now, you may be asking yourself, well, who benefits from this system? Well, I think we can all piece it together. Tournament directors, sponsors and broadcasters, local tennis federations, and players that are lower ranked that try to farm ranking points through volume. But the core identity of tennis, a season with memorable arcs, big stages, and dramatic peaks, has been sidelined. Tennis doesn't need more content. It needs more meaning. Reduce the calendar, make rest rewarded, not punished, prioritize quality over quantity, a calendar with fewer, more meaningful weeks where each event genuinely matters would make tennis more compelling for players and fans alike. Right now, there's too many tournaments and they've turned the sport into a perpetual march with fewer memorable moments. We should remember the winners of most tournaments throughout the year. They shouldn't just exist. But let us know what you think. Are we on the money with this idea, or are we a little off? See you next time.